A 15-year-old girl vanished right in the middle of a crowded hair salon. But 10 years later, a single strand of her hair turned up in an underground sewer like a desperate message sent straight from hell. Baltimore, Maryland, fall of 2005. The Edgewood neighborhood bustled with life as usual. The hair salon on Greenfield Street stayed open late into the evening, welcoming weekend customers. Inside, the snip of scissors, the scent of hairspray, and bursts of laughter filled the air. Amid this familiar scene was 15-year-old Maya Thompson. Working as an assistant, she diligently swept up hair, cleaned mirrors, and fetched drinks for clients. Maya dreamed of becoming a famous stylist, and this salon was her first step toward that goal. But that night, everything changed forever. The salon owner said he stepped out for just 10 minutes. When he returned, Maya was gone as if she had never existed. No one saw her leave. There were no cameras, no evidence at all. If Maya had run away on her own, then why were all her belongings, from her comb and sneakers to her backpacks, till right where she'd been working that night? Rain began to fall, and the alley beside the salon led to an old storm drain. A damp, icy smell drifted from the rusted manhole cover that hadn't been touched in years. No one knew then that this very place would become a horrifying clue years later. Maya Thompson was born on March 18, 1990, and grew up in the Edgewood neighborhood, a place not far from downtown Baltimore. Yet it felt like an entirely different world. In this neighborhood, everyone knew each other, greeting one another from the porches of old painted houses and the tiny shops that had stood for generations. Maya's mother named her Maya to symbolize pride and hope. She was the only source of joy and pride for Angela Thompson, a woman in her 30s who worked the night shift at the local supermarket, always striving just hard enough to keep their small home from being repossessed by the bank. Maya's father died when she was just 2, leaving mother and daughter to fend for themselves in a community where survival often meant looking out for yourself before anyone else. Despite the hardships, Maya grew up to be a bright, radiant girl. At school, she wasn't the top student, but her nimble fingers made her the go-to person for braiding hair. Every girl wanted Maya to do theirs. Each morning, she styled her own hair into creative new looks, making it her personal signature, even in the bland school uniform. Maya loved listening to R&B and hip-hop, and she devoured old-fashioned magazines her mother sometimes found at discount bookstores. She would cut out striking hairstyles, plaster them all over her bedroom walls, and jot down notes on braiding techniques and coloring methods in her diary. Maya once wrote one day, "People will talk about Maya Thompson as a famous hairstylist." For her, the little hair salon on Greenfield Street was the first step toward that dream, a place where she could practice, learn, and let her passion shine among old scissors, combs, and hair dryers, always buzzing with laughter. Angela Thompson was born in 1971 and raised right there in Edgewood. She became pregnant with Maya at just 17, and her world nearly collapsed when her boyfriend walked out upon hearing the news. But Angela refused to give up. She took on every job she could find, from waiting tables to cleaning hotel rooms, while slowly finishing her high school diploma. By the time Maya turned 5, Angela had secured a steady job at the Safeway supermarket, taking night shifts so she could be there for her daughter during the day. Angela showed her love through quiet gestures, not expensive gifts, a rushed lunchbox prepared at dawn, a gentle stroke of Maya's hair as she fell asleep on the couch after staying up late to study. Angela knew her daughter was different. Maya wasn't just a dreamer. She was willing to spend hours perfecting braids for friends, determined to learn everything she could, even without the means to attend a professional beauty school. Angela felt both pride and fear. She knew that the bigger the dream, the greater the risk, especially when they had no one else to rely on. Every night, Maya worked late at the salon. Angela would leave the light on, mending her daughter's torn uniform and preparing breakfast for the next day. She believed that, as long as they stuck together, Maya wouldn't fall prey to the temptations that had swallowed up so many kids in their neighborhood. Angela once told a friend, "As long as I'm alive, my girl will be safe." But the cruel reality would prove that not every promise a mother makes can be kept, especially when evil hides right where you feel safest. Edgewood, Baltimore. In the 2000s was a place where nobody was surprised to see police cars show up weekly for disputes, petty thefts, or neighbors' quarrels. Yet Edgewood also had its bright spots, people clinging to hope through small businesses. Among them, Mr. Darrell Jenkins' Barbershop stood out as an unofficial cultural hub. Every weekend morning, the waiting chairs would be packed, filled with lively chatter about sports, news, and neighborhood gossip. Men, women, and teens took turns in the barber's chair, while little kids dashed around the piles of hair clippings on the floor. This tiny shop had been around for over 20 years, becoming a piece of collective memory, a place where birthdays, weddings, and funerals were planned, and joys and sorrows were shared. Maya became a vibrant part of the salon, adored by everyone, who often playfully called her their little stylist. She learned how to chat with clients, sense what they wanted, and confidently handle basic hairstyles. Whenever Maya was working, the shop felt warmer, filled with laughter, and even Angela felt more at ease, knowing Maya was treated like the neighborhood's daughter. But no one could have imagined that the very place they trusted the most would become the starting point of an unending nightmare. When Maya vanished into the night, leaving behind a sea of unanswered questions. On the quiet evening of September 12, 2005, Mr. Darrell Jenkins' Barbershop stayed lit later than usual. It was a damp night, with a misty drizzle turning the streets into shimmering gray mirrors of headlights. Inside the shop, Maya Thompson was finishing up the last of her cleaning duties after a long, exhausting shift. She swept up the final bits of hair clippings, wiped down the chairs, and straightened the bottles of gel and hairspray. As she worked, Mr. Darrell told her he needed to step out for about 10 minutes to buy cigarettes from the convenience store at the corner. He reminded her to lock the front door if any strangers came by. Maya nodded, watching Mr. Darrell head out into the night wearing a dark coat. She was now alone in the shop. The wall clock ticked over to 8:40 p.m., its second hand clicking steadily in the unnaturally quiet space. Outside, the rain pattered on the old tin roof, and wind howled through a crack in the broken window, adding a chilling edge to the air. Maya sat down on the long bench by the window, leaning back to rest for a moment, gazing at the blurred streetlights shimmering through the rain. For a few minutes, everything seemed to slow down, and the familiar barbershop felt strangely alien. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, her reflection in the large mirror across from her showing a pensive, distant look. No one knew that this was the last moment anyone would ever see Maya alive and at peace, according to Mr. Darrell's later account, when he returned to the shop nearly 15 minutes later. The door was slightly ajar. The lights were still on, and the small radio on the reception desk was playing old R&B songs. But Maya was gone. The broom she had used was propped against the wall. Her white sneakers, always worn for work, sat neatly near barber chair number 3, and her backpack was resting untouched on the bench. There were no signs of struggle, nothing broken, no blood. Everything was eerily calm, so calm that it made Mr. Darrell's skin crawl. He called out, "Maya, where are you?" but no one answered. He searched every corner of the shop, from the bathroom to the color-mixing room, to the towel cabinet. Within minutes, fear began to seep in. He rushed outside, scanning the deserted street. But all he could hear was the rain tapping on the sidewalk and see the dim glow of streetlights. Not a single soul in sight. What made things even more baffling was the heavy rain if Maya had stepped out just moments earlier. She would have been drenched, yet no one saw her leave, and there were no wet footprints on the shop floor or the sidewalk outside. It was as if she had vanished into thin air from the sealed space of the barbershop. Terrified, Mr. Darrell called Angela, Maya's mother, his voice shaking and breaking as he told her that her daughter had disappeared. That call would forever change Angela's life. Angela arrived at the shop just 20 minutes later, bursting in and screaming Maya's name in desperation, seeing her daughter's shoes perfectly in place and her untouched backpack. Angela collapsed to the floor. Her worst fear had come true. Police were called to the scene that very night. 2 night shift officers arrived, asked a few cursory questions, and began searching around the shop. They looked through the interior, the small parking lot, and the narrow alley leading behind the barber shop. Though they noticed an old manhole cover at the end of the alley was slightly ajar, they merely glanced into the dark sewer below and dismissed it as impossible for a teenage girl to have climbed in herself. No one questioned why the heavy, rarely used manhole was open on a rainy night, instead of issuing an urgent search. The police quickly concluded Maya had probably run away after a minor argument with her mother the week before about her school performance. Angela broke down, insisting that Maya had never spent a night away from home and was terrified of the dark. But her pleas were met with indifferent nods. That very first night, Angela felt the profound loneliness of being a black mother whose voice wasn't enough to move those in power to take her daughter's disappearance seriously. The next morning, Edgewood woke up to the news of Maya Thompson's disappearance. Mothers whispered to each other as they walked their kids to school. Elders gathering at the barbershop eyed each other with suspicion. Mr. Darrell, pale and shaken, kept insisting he had only been gone for 10 minutes. But his story began to crack when a nearby newspaper vendor claimed he'd seen Mr. Darrell standing near the manhole behind the shop smoking for over half an hour. By noon that day, Angela received an anonymous message on her old pager, "Maya will never come back." The words were like a knife, deepening the despair and spreading fear through the Edgewood community. Police, however, refused to reconsider their stance. They insisted Maya had left on her own. No Amber Alert was issued, and no media outlet reported on the case. The first critical hours, the golden window to find a missing person, slipped away quietly, wasted. Maya seemed to have been swallowed by the stormy night, leaving behind only her untouched belongings in the barbershop. Each tick of the clock in that shop became a cruel reminder of the fateful moment no one could undo, a night when a young girl's dream was extinguished in the indifference of those who were supposed to protect her. In the very first days of the investigation, witness statements about the night Maya disappeared began to contradict each other. Mr. Darrell Jenkins, the barbershop owner, insisted he had only been gone for 10 to 15 minutes, leaving the shop at 8:40 p.m. and returning around 8:55. However, the owner of the convenience store across the street claimed she saw Mr. Darrell standing under the awning outside her shop for nearly 30 minutes, smoking and talking on his phone, according to her. He arrived a little after 8:30 and didn't leave until after 9 p.m. Meanwhile, a newspaper vendor at the far end of the block said he spotted a man wearing a dark coat matching Mr. Darrell's description lingering near the manhole behind the barbershop, repeatedly bending down as if searching for or hiding something. When asked why these statements weren't immediately compared, police explained that since they believed Maya had simply run away, there was no need to investigate details not directly relevant to her supposed intent to leave. By dismissing the conflicting timeline of the only adult witness present that night, they planted seeds of doubt not only in Angela's mind, but in many Edgewood residents who knew better. People began whispering, what if Maya never left the shop at all? What if it all happened right inside? The clearest physical evidence at the scene was Maya's white sneakers, placed neatly next to the barber chair she usually cleaned, and her pink hairbrush lying on the reception desk. What baffled everyone was that if Maya had willingly left, why would she leave behind her shoes, something she never did, especially on a rainy night? Those shoes were a birthday gift from her mother, and Maya cherished them so much she cleaned them every night. Even more unsettling was that the pink hairbrush was lined up perfectly next to the scissors, almost as if someone had deliberately arranged them before anyone discovered she was missing. This tiny detail sent chills down people's spines, because while Maya was tidy, she had the typical teenage habit of leaving things scattered in her backpack or on chairs, rarely so precisely organized. When Angela pointed this out to police, they dismissed her concerns as overthinking caused by worry. The way they brushed aside her fears not only left Angela feeling powerless, but also made her doubt her own instincts. Am I going crazy, or is something truly wrong that's being hidden? One of the most important but overlooked witnesses was Marcus Lewis, a young newspaper delivery man who dropped papers at the convenience store 2 doors down. He reported that at around 8:50 p.m. that night, as he rode his bike past the alley behind the barber shop, he heard a strange noise coming from the direction of the sewer, like someone banging or kicking metal, followed by a short, terrified scream that was abruptly cut off. Marcus stopped, tilted his head to listen, but as the rain grew heavier and wind gusts howled, the sounds vanished into the storm. Thinking he had imagined it, he continued his route, never realizing he might have heard Maya's desperate struggle. After hearing about Maya's disappearance, Marcus went to the police himself to give a statement. But records show his account was scribbled in a few rushed lines at the end of a report. And no one checked the sewer area he described. For a community long accustomed to seeing police prioritize cases they deem more important than those involving black victims, the fact that a young man's testimony was ignored was unsurprising, but it left behind a bitter, angry resignation. The final and most haunting detail was the old iron manhole cover behind the barbershops, a spot everyone in the neighborhood knew to avoid because of the foul, damp smell rising from it. On the night Maya vanished, the manhole was found ajar by about 4 inches. A highly unusual sight given that the heavy cover weighed over 40 pounds and was rarely moved except by utility workers. A store clerk said he saw a flashlight beam shining from inside the sewer just before Mr. Darrell returned to the shop. Yet when police arrived, they simply shut the manhole without organizing any search below, citing the heavy rain and deeming it implausible for a teenage girl to have climbed in. They suggested the open cover was caused by wind or rain, even though multiple witnesses swore they had never seen it open on its own before. These contradictions, puzzling details, and scattered clues began to pile up into a tangled maze. But instead of being connected into a coherent investigation, they were left isolated, forgotten, or brushed aside in perfunctory reports in the silence of the stormy night. Maya vanished, and those seemingly small, overlooked details were her faint, final cries for help, buried beneath indifference and prejudice. After the night Maya disappeared, time seemed to slip by without leaving a shred of hope. Each morning, Angela woke with a numb emptiness, staring into her daughter's room, preserved exactly as it was the day Maya vanished, the bed perfectly made, the pillow still carrying the faint scent of Maya's shampoo, her school uniform hanging neatly in the closet. Angela refused to touch anything, keeping even Maya's handwritten work schedule on the nightstand, clinging to it as a fragile thread of faith. But over 10 long years, that faith was worn down by silence. There were no calls, no messages, no new leads, nothing except the anonymous threat sent that first night. Maya had disappeared as if she had never existed, leaving her mother alone in a home that grew colder by the day. Meanwhile, Mr. Darrell Jenkins continued to run the barbershop. Though fewer and fewer customers came over the years, he kept opening every day, cutting hair for loyal clients and taking on new apprentices. He lived quietly, keeping to himself, avoiding any gossip. When asked about the night Maya vanished, he would only shake his head and repeat the same words: "I was gone, just 10 minutes. When I came back, she was gone." Over time, people stopped bringing it up, unwilling to confront the horrifying possibility that a child might have been harmed right in the heart of their tight-knit community. Life in Edgewood churned on with busy days and hurried routines, letting Maya's memory slip into the shadows. On the night of August 28, 2015, a massive summer storm swept through Baltimore. Ferocious winds and torrential rain turned Edgewood streets into muddy streams. The old storm drain behind the barbershop, long clogged and neglected, began to back up, sending filthy water flooding into the narrow alley. The worried owner of the convenience store across the street, fearing the rising water might damage her building's foundation, called the city's emergency maintenance team. Before dawn, utility trucks arrived. Workers set up halogen lights and drilled into the concrete around the manhole to relieve pressure from the surging water. As the rain paused briefly, one worker leaned over the manhole and caught a foul, overpowering stench far worse than any normal sewer odor. When he shone his flashlight deep into the drain, he spotted what looked like a long strand of hair caught on a rusted metal bar. He carefully pulled it up, a dark brown hair nearly half a meter long, tangled between 2 connecting pipes. The hair was unusually soft and well preserved for being in such an old, grimy sewer. The crew foreman immediately called the police, suspecting a link to the decade-old missing persons case that had once rocked the neighborhood. Work was halted, and the scene was preserved for investigators. For Angela, the call about a long hair matching her daughter's description hit like a second storm in her heart, tearing open wounds that had never truly healed. Local police and a forensics team arrived swiftly, while combing the sewer. They uncovered 2 more chilling clues. First, a broken white plastic necklace engraved with the name Maya in childish lettering, half buried in the mud along the sewer wall. Second, an old ligature mark on a metal bar, with dark stains that could have been dried blood or rust. Forensics collected samples and sent them for testing. Inside the barbershop, police searched the old storage room that shared a wall with the sewer line. There, they discovered that part of the wall had been repaired years ago. Some bricks in the lower corner were noticeably newer, dating back roughly 10 years. Coinciding with Maya's disappearance. Investigators wondered, why would someone patch an obscure corner of the shop wall unless they had something to hide piece by piece? Details began to fall into place. Mr. Darrell's longer-than-admitted absence, the open manhole, the scream heard from the sewer, and now the hair matching Maya's description, although no body was found. The evidence pointed to a grim possibility had Maya been dragged into the sewer, held captive, or killed, with her traces buried beneath layers of cold, wet concrete. When news of the new evidence broke on local broadcasts, Edgewood collectively held its breath. Neighbors gathered outside the barbershop, whispering, pointing, sharing hazy memories from a decade ago. Angela was there too, collapsing beside the manhole, her eyes empty and distant. In the crowd, there were quiet sobs. Maya had once been their friend, student, niece, the child the entire neighborhood claimed to protect. Yet some people quickly distanced themselves, insisting Maya had run away and that this had nothing to do with anyone here. The community was divided. Some demanded a thorough investigation. Others wanted to bury the story to avoid staining the neighborhood's reputation. The media descended on Edgewood, questioning residents and dredging up old records of the case. Images of Angela clutching Maya's faded backpack, head bowed in anguish, spread across evening newscasts, reigniting a profound sense of guilt and sorrow. What had once been a forgotten case now became a focal point, not only for Maya's tragic fate, but also for exposing society's indifference to missing black children. DNA tests confirmed the hair's genetic match to Maya with 99% certainty, identical to a sample preserved from her hairbrush 10 years earlier. The revelation hit the community like a lightning strike. Maya had been in the sewer behind the barbershop after the night she disappeared, shattering any illusion she had run away. Police reopened the case, focusing on Mr. Darrell, the last person known to see her alive. But he denied everything, saying he was horrified to learn Maya might have been harmed so close to his shop. He allowed a thorough search of the barbershop and his home, but no body or new evidence was found. Without enough proof to charge him, police had no choice but to let him go, even as investigators and the community's suspicion deepened. The most shocking twist emerged when detectives discovered a small scrap of paper wedged in an old wall crack near the sewer. It bore a hastily scrawled message: "I'm sorry. Mom. I'm scared. Please forgive me." Handwriting analysis found an 80% match with Maya's known writing. The note tore into everyone's hearts. Had Maya written it herself while trapped? Or was it planted to make it seem she had left willingly for the first time in a decade? Edgewood had to confront the truth. Maya didn't vanish because she rebelled. She may have been lured, kidnapped, or worse, murdered right beneath the very neighborhood that thought it was safe. After DNA testing confirmed that the hair found in the sewer belonged to Maya, every eye in Edgewood turned to Mr. Darrell Jenkins with intense suspicion. Stories long forgotten over the past 10 years were dredged up once more. Neighbors recalled seeing Mr. Darrell coming and going through the alley behind the barbershop at odd hours, often late at night. Some remembered glimpsing a flashlight beam moving from the back door of the shop toward the manhole during rainy nights. But at the time, they assumed he was just checking the drains. These small, isolated details aunts ignored now pieced together into a chilling picture. Local news stations ran endless segments showing old photos of Maya, intercut with video of Mr. Darrell avoiding reporters' questions outside his barbershop. Broadcasts kept repeating that Mr. Darrell was the last person known to have seen Maya, and those who once trusted him began to feel torn. Edgewood split into two camps, one convinced he was guilty, the other insisting he was innocent and that the police's failures a decade earlier were what truly doomed the case. The community grew tense. Friends and neighbors stopped speaking over disagreements about whom to believe. Just as the pressure on Mr. Darrell reached a fever pitch, a surprising lead emerged: a man named Curtis Brown, a plumber who had been hired to maintain the sewer system behind the barbershop about a month before Maya vanished, reached out to police after seeing the news. He recounted that while repairing the pipes, he noticed a section of recently replaced PVC pipe, still giving off the fresh plastic smell, and part of the drain cemented over with concrete a different color from the surrounding older sections. Curtis thought nothing of it at the time, assuming the shop owner had made repairs to prevent clogs, but to investigators, the possibility was chilling if Mr. Darrell had altered the drain shortly before Maya's disappearance. Could he have been preparing a place to hide a person or evidence? However, further investigation revealed the newly replaced pipe predated Curtis' job by several weeks. It had been installed by an earlier repair crew before Mr. Darrell ever hired him. Hopes of this being the smoking gun evaporated. Once again, a promising lead dissolved into a dead end, fueling the community's already fraying nerves. As tensions began to ease slightly, right around the 10-year anniversary of Maya's disappearance, Angela received another anonymous message. "You will never find her. Let it rest." The text came from an unregistered, prepaid phone and was sent precisely at midnight on the anniversary of Maya's disappearance. The timing sent shockwaves through Edgewood if Maya had been harmed. Who was still watching Angela after a decade? Could more than one person have been involved, or was the perpetrator still living among them? Brazen enough to send a message just as the case was back in the spotlight this time. Police couldn't afford the complacency of a decade earlier. They traced cell tower data, but because the message was sent from a disposable phone, the signal could only be narrowed down to a 5-kilometer radius, covering the entire Edgewood area, leaving them unable to pinpoint the sender. What seemed like a breakthrough instead became a chilling reminder someone was still hiding in plain sight, unafraid to taunt both the family and the law. During a renewed search of the barbershop, a young detective stumbled upon an old shop ledger listing debts owed by regular customers. One name stood out: Malik Turner. Records showed he had been in the barbershop the night Maya disappeared, his visit nearly overlapping with Mr. Darrell's departure. Malik worked night shifts as a delivery driver for a nearby business. Yet his name had never come up as a witness or suspect over the past 10 years. When police tracked him down, Malik admitted he had stopped by for a haircut that night. He remembered seeing Maya sweeping in the corner and recalled Mr. Darrell stepping out, but insisted he had left before anything happened. He claimed he heard or saw nothing unusual. Malik's statement deepened the mystery if he was telling the truth. It meant Maya was still alive when Mr. Darrell stepped out, disappearing in the brief window when the shop was empty. But if Malik was lying, he could have been the last person to see Maya alive, or worse, the person responsible, with no evidence to corroborate or contradict his account. The investigation became even more entangled. Angela, the community, and the police were left reeling. Had Maya's abductor never left Edgewood at all, or had someone orchestrated an elaborate deception, turning neighbors against each other to keep the truth hidden in the days following these revelations? Edgewood fell under a heavy, suffocating cloud of fear. Mothers began eyeing neighbors warily, afraid the person next door might be hiding a monstrous secret. Families kept their children indoors, even during the day. The barbershop closed indefinitely. No one dared return. Maya's former school held a small prayer service, but the mood was somber and oppressive. Angela spiraled into despair, no longer sure whom to trust or whether to keep hoping or fighting for answers. A crisis of faith spread through Edgewood. Everyone yearned for the truth, yet each new clue only clouded the picture further. There was still no body, no definitive evidence, and no suspect who could be charged. Every lead ended in a dead end, leaving behind a haunting, unspoken terror. The person who took Maya might still be out there, living freely, while the community remained paralyzed by fear, unable to name the evil that had stolen a child from their midst. In the weeks following the anonymous message and the emergence of new leads, Edgewood sank into a heavy, oppressive gloom. Restaurants stood empty. The barbershop's doors stayed shuttered, and residents avoided discussing Maya's disappearance as if afraid the fear itself might be contagious. The old missing posters, plastered on telephone poles and showing Maya's radiant smile, were now faded and rain-soaked under the autumn storms. The tragedy had become a scar on Edgewood streets, an unspoken weight pressing on everyone, as each investigative effort ended in another dead end. Silence returned to rule the small neighborhood. Angela, Maya's mother, quietly became a ghost in the very community she had known all her life. She stopped going to work, stopped cooking, spending hours alone in Maya's room, staring at the photos on the wall, gently running her hands over birthday cards once filled with joy. She no longer cried out loud, only let silent tears slip down her face, tears of longing and despair. Many people felt sympathy for her, but no one knew what to do except bow their heads when they passed the small, weathered blue house on the corner. Even her closest friends fell silent, not from a lack of love, but from the fear that speaking might reopen a wound with no hope of healing. Although police announced they had no new evidence to continue the investigation, Angela remained resolute. She preserved Maya's room as a living memorial. The stuffed bear her daughter cuddled every night sat neatly on the bed. The coat hook still carried the faint scent of cheap shampoo Maya loved. Her notebook of half-finished hairstyle sketches stayed open on the desk. Every morning, Angela opened Maya's window to let sunlight spill across the old-school desk and whispered, "Good morning." "My love," she told everyone, "as long as I breathe, Maya is still here." It was her vow to herself and to the world that no matter how many turned away, she would not let her daughter's memory be erased. Though Edgewood was deeply divided, the community ultimately came together for one quiet ritual each year. On the anniversary of Maya's disappearance, those who once loved her gathered outside the now abandoned barbershop, lighting candles and praying for the truth to come to light. Children growing up in Edgewood heard Maya's story like a sorrowful legenda tale of loss, regret, and a reminder of their duty to look out for each other. Though the case closed without a clear answer, Maya lived on in the memories of a bright, talented girl cherished by everyone who knew her. Her friends grew up, many becoming hairstylists, nurses, teachers, and they told their own children about the little girl who once dreamed of opening her own salon. In these stories, Maya was not just a victim, she was an inspiration, a symbol of perseverance and of dreams that refused to be crushed by hardship. Former classmates at Maya's school launched a small scholarship fund in her name, Maya's Dream, to help underprivileged students pursue careers in cosmetology or beauty. Each recipient was encouraged to learn Maya's story, not to pity her, but to understand the power of holding on to a dream even when the world seems full of storms and doubt. During scholarship ceremonies, speakers reminded everyone Maya taught us never to forget what we've lost and never to leave anyone alone in the dark. The story of Maya Thompson didn't end with a conviction or the discovery of her body. It ended in the lingering ache of unanswered questions. Who took Maya? Why did no one hear her cries for help? And is the person who shattered her life still walking free in Edgewood? No one knows. But that silence has left an indelible scar on the community, a harsh lesson in how indifference can kill a child as surely as violence. Yet amid the pain, Edgewood found a fragile glimmer of light, a collective promise never to let another child vanish in silence. The truth about the night Maya disappeared remains elusive, but the love of her mother, the memories of her friends, and the efforts of those determined to protect every child have become Maya's legacy. And in Edgewood, as the morning sun filters through the old buildings. The story of Maya is still told. Quiet reminder that love can be tested, but it will never truly disappear.